What's a family secret you didn't get told until you were older that made things finally make sense? My father always talked about how his brother lied to a doctor so he could get on disability. I thought it was so easy for anyone to get a disability check. All you had to do was tell your doctor you were abducted by aliens. #X200B. Years later, my father had a mental breakdown. He started telling stories about the government implanting a chip in his brain. He went out and got a CAT scan as proof, and he would point to things that weren't there. My dad was diagnosed as a schizophrenic, and years later, he started collecting a disability check because he couldn't hold a job. Kind of hard to perform any job when every conversation, including interviews, veers into the government trying to duck me in the ass. As an adult, it dawned on me when my aunt mentioned mental illness runs in the family. My uncle had never lied to his doctor. He told that doctor what he believed to be the absolute truth: he had been abducted by aliens. Wow, it's kind of crazy how your dad just never believed your uncle at all. Does mental illness run in a particular side of your family? I know men can be more prone to schizophrenia, but I know in my family the anxiety runs in my mom's side and the depression my dad's. My dad denies it though. Yeah, anxiety runs deep on my mom's side of the family. It took me a long time to realize my anxiety was a clinical issue because in my childhood every woman I spent large amounts of time with exhibited the same behavior. Definitely some denial there too. I didn't know one of my cousins existed until I was about 10 years old. Turns out he was diagnosed with leukemia as a child and I was a very sensitive kid, so my family decided not to tell me until the treatment was successful and he recovered. It would have been okay if they told me as soon as he was healthy again, but I guess they forgot, so the first time I met him, I was wondering how exactly I managed to forget the existence of a whole person. I thought that was going to end with your cousin passing away, and they just let you go on not knowing about them. But damn, they survived and just didn't mention it. Was told my aunt and uncle died because of a carbon monoxide leak in their house. When I was 16 I was told the truth. My uncle was having serious money problems. He shot my aunt and then hung himself. Same with mine, but it turns out she caught him raping their young daughter. He shot her then shot himself afterward. Holy shit. What happened to the daughter? My pet rabbit got attacked by something a couple years after I got it. My parents found it dead and replaced it before I found out. I just thought my rabbit lived super long, but it was actually 2 rabbits. This happened over 10 years ago and I found out last year. My aunt and uncle, who passed away when I was 11, were drug addicts. I adored them, but as I got older I started seeing less and less of them and never understood why. My parents briefly told me when I was 16 and that my uncle didn't die of a brain tumor, actually had one though, but instead he shot himself while my aunt was in the other room, which led to my aunt's drug-related death on New Year's Day. They finally told me the whole story when I was 21. I was the last person to know, even my little brother knew before me, because I was extremely close to them and looked so highly of them. I still do. I wish I would have known sooner, but I understand why they didn't tell me. That my granny attempted suicide when my mom was in high school. My mom was the one that found her. Luckily she did find her, because if she hadn't she wouldn't have survived. It explains why my mom panics the way she does and jumps to conclusions all the time. If she can't get a hold of me or my brother on the phone, she automatically assumes we are dead and she panics. Recently, she couldn't get a hold of my brother for a few hours and she lost all composure and had a nervous breakdown. We just are starting to realize after all these years, that she probably has undiagnosed PTSD. I've had the misfortune of finding a couple of dead people in my house. One was a friend and the other was a roommate a few years later, and I jumped to weird, panicky conclusions too. If my so's phone dies, I immediately assume he's dead. Or a thought will creep in, like that someone I'm saying goodbye to could get hit by a bus when they leave, and I get all worked up over it. It's gotten better over the years, but stuff like that can definitely do a number on you. I hope your mom is able to find some peace with it. Edit, wow, didn't expect so many people to see this. I'm sad to hear that so many people have had experiences like this, but please know that you're not alone and it gets better, little by little. My sister and I both got UTIs at the same time when our family was staying at our grandparents' house. One day my grandma took both of us aside and started what felt like an interrogation about whether any adults had touched us. Like, if something happened, you have to tell me right now. At the time, I felt gross, confused, and guilty, even though nothing had happened. It was just too intense. I later learned that my grandma had been sexually abused by her brother for years and her mother refused to believe her. Good for her for looking out for you though. My grandma remarried when my mom was a toddler. Turns out that bio dad was cheating on grandma with her best friend, resulting in a child and a divorce. He recently passed away after having no contact with us since he left grandma. Turns out our family was his secret family that his current family never knew about. He also mentioned that it's very likely my mom has a couple dozen half-siblings in Vietnam. Also, he left all his money to his favorite prostitute in his will. Editoire didn't expect so many responses on this. Sounds like a few people are in similar situations too. Let me clear up a few things people have asked about. While in Vietnam, it was common for soldiers to rape many women. He did this in several villages and farms. None of it was consensual. While the prostitute did get the money in the will, it was hardly anything. He was in a lot of medical debt and didn't have much. His other family did take it to court to contest the will, though I'm not sure how it ended because my mother made it clear that she didn't want a penny from him. His daughter, my mom's half-sister, had no idea that he had another family before having her. She only found out as he confessed it when he was near dying. She got in touch with us, but my mother perhaps rudely, but what she felt she had to do made it clear that we wanted nothing to do with them. He left all his money to his favorite prostitute in his will. Damn, he got some priorities. I have an uncle who is a hardcore alcoholic and lived with my grandparents until they passed. We always thought he was just a non-motivated loser. I have another uncle that passed away well before I was born. Got hit by a car coming back from the store getting something for my grandparents. After both grandparents passed, my mom told me that the alcoholic uncle was asked to go to the store but bribed his little brother to go instead, which led to his death. My grandmother, who I have always held in very, very high regard, told my alcoholic uncle afterward that his brother would still be alive if he had gone to the store like she asked. I cannot imagine the guilt that would have laid on him and completely understand why he ended up that way as a result. In my adult life, I've found that my uncle is actually a pretty good man, just dealt a shitty hand. My dad's youngest brother came home drunk one night and got into a fight with my grandpa. My uncle punched grandpa in the face and went to bed. Grandpa went to the bathroom and never came out. My dad came over in the morning and found him dead in the bathroom. He had a massive heart attack. My uncle drank, smoked, snorted, and stole anything and everything for as long as he could. He eventually went to jail, and when he got out, he hung himself. Maybe he would have turned out the same either way, but my dad told me the full story about 5 years ago, and it made me wonder if his life would have been any better if not for that one night. My grandparents forced my aunt to get an abortion before my family moved to America, rendering her permanently sterile. It finally makes sense why none of the adults talk about having children around her. That happened to my aunt too. She was 1,516 and was 5 months along when my grandfather forced an abortion on her. She became sterile from a botched operation. It was illegally done, and my aunt was never the same from it apparently. She was miserable ever since then and succumbed to depression about 12 years ago and killed herself. I loved her a lot and miss her dearly. Out of all the relatives, I look like her exact clone too. That kind of trauma is something that is extremely hard to recover from without serious professional help. I really hope that your aunt maybe finds help and finds some peace somehow. My mom was in the hospital, so I flew home. Me and my dad were hanging out getting drunk, and he started telling me family secrets, almost like he was trying to get a reaction out of me. An uncle was molested, an estranged aunt might actually have a different father than we thought, etc. The one that really got me was when he revealed that he used to do coke. I was imagining he meant like in his 20s. I said, "When did you stop?" And he said, "I think you were about 19. Like ducking what, man? My entire childhood?" And he said, "Yup." Did mom know? Yes. How much? About a gram a week. At first it was completely insane to me, but looking back it made a ton of stuff make way more sense. Crazy mood swings, explosive fights, 1 minute he would be fine and then suddenly he would be raving about something. I knew he drank, so I always blamed the instability in the house on that. But finding out he was regularly doing coke all my life was both astounding and it made complete sense. A gram a week for decades? Say what you will, but that takes some self-control. I was thinking the same thing. The tolerance build up to that stuff happens pretty quick. I do a gram a week, but I do 6 weeks a day.